Peterson, for those who don't know, and he's going to kind of introduce himself from here on out, so take it away.
Like I said, my name is Clayton Peterson, and here's a picture of me and Barb on our testing 5A. There you go. As you said, my name is Clayton Peterson, and there's a picture of me and my wife at my nephew's barbecue, and we've always been involved in veterans kind of stuff, and it's because of where I came from and our family and all. I'd like to thank the Mobile River Rainforest Association for the use of their pictures and slides. I lost all my pictures. Not a single one survived to Vietnam, so I have to rely upon the association I belong to for their pictures. They're from the same guys and the same units in the same 3-year time period. They all were in the Mobile River Rainforest. It's kind of a hard picture to see, so let's get that. I grew up in back in the 40s and 50s, and that's back when 15-cent hamburgers were average. We used to go to the theater, and if you were rich back then, you had a quarter allowance. And a quarter allowance, we'd go out on Saturdays, we'd go to the Sioux Theater, 10 cents to get in for the matinee, for kiddie matinee. You could buy a nickel candy bar, nickel soda pop, nickel bag of popcorn, all for a quarter. And then the movie was a full-length movie with a short movie with 4 or 5 cartoons, a newsreel, and who knows what else. That's where I learned all those Zorro and the Lone Ranger and all those heroes and stuff on the screen. Yeah, there's some of the movies. The science fictions are ones I like. And when TV came along later, we were the first in our neighborhood to get a TV set, and so naturally all the kids came to look at it. You got to realize TV. We didn't have a TV station. Our TV station was across the river, a mile away in Sault Ste. Marie, Canada, and they were on. It was the only TV station probably in 100 miles, and they were on from noon to 3 o'clock, and they only had one station. So we watched Howdy Doody and whatever else, the news. It was a slow start. We were at the beginning of the TV age. And that's where, one of our heroes and comic book heroes. But comic book heroes, that's not reality. And it kind of gives you a false sense of reality. It wasn't until years later I learned who real heroes were. Now here's me, my brother John, my sister Janice, me crying, I didn't like that picture taken, and my sister Frida. And one of the good things about having 6 brothers and sisters is that they kept the neighborhood bullies in line. And they were the first ones I looked up to as heroes. And years later, as I look back, I realized my parents were heroes, how hard they worked. There wasn't no welfare then. There was no food stamps. And I look back now as a father and grandfather and realize that how much they sacrificed and how much they worked. And I look back and they're my heroes now. This is a few years later, and there's my cousin Kenny and me crying again. Crybaby. And my sister called me Crybaby Clayton. And there's my brother John, we're playing cowboys and stuff. Well, oops, go back, sorry. Me and my brother, we got along good till high school years, and then we fought over doing dishes, and we got a couple black eyes and bloody noses, and when he moved away, I thought, oh boy. But he changed, and I didn't know it. He had became a Christian, I think a day or two before he moved away, and he moved all the way, far away from Aberdeen, from Sault Ste. Marie as you can get. Aberdeen, Washington. And my mom and my parents, they split up. Then my mom packed us kids up and we moved as far away from Sault Ste. Marie as you could get, Aberdeen, Washington. And it didn't have a good reputation back in the 50s and 60s. But we moved there and I knew my brother had changed because when I first saw him, he gave me the coat off his back, he gave me a pair of shoes, the second pair of shoes he had, he gave me a shirt. And I thought, well, he's changed. And that's when I found out he became a Christian, and then I told him about my experience. And, I gotta back it up, sorry. What happened with me is I wasn't very good when my family was having problems, and I got in trouble, and I was arrested a couple times. Matter of fact, I was the head of they call it the juvenile delinquents. But it was a small gang of kids in 7th grade, and I did 8th grade twice. I flunked because of the gang and skipping school. And 3 years in the gang, and back then the gangs were different. We didn't have guns. We had knives. The police always fisted us and took them away. We didn't have, so it was mostly bare fist fighting. And in 3 years I got my nose broke twice and my jaw broke once. But we were juvenile delinquents. Anyhow, in the course of events, I got arrested the second time and thrown in jail. And the judge put me in they didn't have a juvie center. They put me right in with the adults in the adult jail, in a 6-man cell, all by myself. First day I toughed it up, but they took my black leather jacket away, they took away my books away, took away my cigarettes. And so I'm 16 in jail, and second and third day, boy, the novelty wears off really quick. And so I finally realized, hey, I wasn't going the right direction. And all my Bible verses came back from what they taught me in catechism in Lutheran church. And I never got through catechism because I could only memorize 3 or 4 of the 18 verses. So I never did get through it, but I memorized the verses. And when I was in that jail cell, those verses came to me. And I told God, I got down on my knees next to the cots, and I said, Lord, I've messed my life up. If I continue the way I'm going, I'm going to end up in prison. And I don't want to go that way. I don't like jail. And I can't run my life, obviously, because I'm in jail. I said, so I'm going to give my life to you. You run it the way you want. And you know, people, I didn't know then, I was so dumb, I didn't know what born again even was. I didn't know what the word meant. But people have different Christian and conversion experiences. Mine, personally, sometimes people have an epiphany, lightning hits them. Some people, it just grows over years and years, and it matures really slow. We're individuals. Well, with me, it was like getting hit by a bolt of lightning. I just felt tremendously all of a sudden. As soon as I said that prayer and gave my life to God, I felt a tremendous joy, and a burden was off my back. I just felt super. They probably thought I was crazy because I started singing all the Bible verses, songs I knew, Holy, 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 and a couple other ones. Well, I went through those songs and I started singing cowboy songs on the radio. I just was so excited. I just felt good. Well, after a while, things calmed down, and an old man came by with it. White beard, white hair, and he came by, and he said to me, here, have this. And he gave me a little booklet. And I realized it's now what you'd call the 4 spiritual laws. And so I looked at it, he left, and I looked at it and said, oh, we all sinned and come short of the glory of God. I said, well, yeah, obviously, I knew that. And you need to accept Christ as your Savior and become born again and start a new life with God. And as I read it, I realized that's what I'd done. I'd given my life to God, and I trusted Jesus, and that's why I was different, because I really felt different. It was not me that went in that jail cell days before. I really actually felt like a new person. So it was neat that God sent that old man there to give me that 4 spiritual laws just when I was wondering what happened to me. So I left the jail after, and I got out a couple days, and I left the jail and I went back to my gang, and I told them, I said, hey, I'm not going to be the gang leader no more. I'll be your friends, because they're my neighbors, a couple cousins, and best friends who were still in the gang. I said, we're still friends, but I'm not going to be doing the things you're doing. And they did what we did in our gang, which was the leader took off his black leather jacket and threw it in the backyard, and they all fought over it, fisticuffs. Last guy standing got the leather jacket. He was the leader. Well, the guy who won was my best friend, Kenny the Rat. And so I started a new life. I was different. Well, within a couple of weeks, you know, I was around the Kennedy assassination. A couple of weeks after that, my mom decided to move. She decided to divorce and separate from my dad and divorce, and they split. And Mom picked the farthest way she could get away from Sault Ste. Marie, and that was Aberdeen, Washington. So my brother put us up, and we started a new life. And I went to Weatherlands High School and graduated. And I played the guitar I knew a couple songs. And after I graduated, the Vietnam War was going pretty good. People were getting the draft notices. I got my draft notice, and so I thought, well, I'll go in. Went down to California, visited Barb down there, who I'd met previously while visiting Aunt Hazel down there. And then I stayed about 2 or 3 months, and then finally the Marines wanted me, but I was trying to join the Navy, so I ended up joining the Army. Go figure. So I ended up going in the Army, and the Army, that's pretty bright, isn't it? In the Army, I went through basic and they asked for volunteers for the Green Berets. I and about 400 other guys took the written test, and at the end, 32 of us, 34 of us passed the written test, and he said, okay, you're going to go into Special Forces, but before you get there, you've got to go through your MOS training and you've got to go through your jump school. So, I went to basic training for infantry, went to jump school, got my parachute wings, went to the Special Forces, and they wanted me to be trained as a combat engineer. Well, about this time, my first month I was there, I got word that my stepbrother Freddie Larson was killed in action. It was at the end of the Tet offensive. It was winding down. And I tell you, medals don't make heroes. There's a lot of men that get medals that don't deserve them, and there's a lot of men who should have got medals that don't. Freddie is one of those guys. Him and his men charged. There was like 5 or 6 of them, and they charged 100 enemy, dug in, broke up a hardcore NVA ambush, and I talked to the captain and the medic and stuff, and his best friend later at a reunion, and they told me that by them doing that, they saved 100 lives, because a convoy was just down the road coming, loaded with trucks, and they were just ready to enter the kill zone, and they would have been slaughtered. Such a big ambush. So they saved 100 lives. He died. They found him dead next to some bodies with his best friend, and the enemy fled, and then we attacked the enemy from the air. They found he never got a medal or nothing. You know, one of the things about Freddie, he got his orders for Vietnam. He sat down with his dad. His dad said, "Freddie, you don't have to go to Vietnam." He says, you got a wife and 2 little girls. You don't have to go to Vietnam." He says, also, you could get an exemption because you're the only surviving son. He had a previous brother that died of polio, so that was my stepdad's only 2 sons. He says, you don't have to go to Vietnam. And Freddie looked at him and said, "I cannot stay home letting some other person die in my place, maybe." And so he went. He died. He's one of my heroes. I went to Green Berets, and this is macho, cigarette smoking, gunslinging, Green Beret, training and stuff. While I was there, got married to Barb, and it was married in Los Angeles. It was a nice wedding, and now I had a wife. And after combat engineer training, they found out that they had too many combat engineers, and the pencil pusher said, "Here we are, we're all lined up to graduate. 43 of us, 44 of us. We just spent 8 months in combat engineer training. They spent $250,000 on each one of us, and we're all lined up to get our combat engineer diplomas." And the captain comes out and says, "Well, the Pentagon changed their orders. They got too many combat engineers. So we're only," and I'd already passed. I already got my grades and everything. And he says, "We're only taking the top 3 out of 43. The other 40 of us were down the creek, and I was number 7. I didn't make it. So I never got my degree, and that kind of bummed me out. So they wanted us to be a radio man, and I said, no, I want to be up front. You know, I knew the radio man was the first guy that shot, but I wanted to be fighting. I wanted to have a rifle in my hand, you know. And finally, after 3 months of doing duties in Special Forces, I was everything from guarding the general to being a cook to being a training the cherries in war games and stuff. I did a lot of stuff I really enjoyed. It was kind of fun, but it was games. It was war games. So I got my orders, and I got finally to Vietnam, and you can see there. Whoops. Here's Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, where I grew up. Here's Fort Bragg, where the Green Berets were. Here's where Barb was in Los Angeles. And here's Fort Lewis, near Aberdeen, where I finally left for Vietnam. Flew down to Hawaii, refueled, flew across the ocean, across the Philippines, into Vietnam right here. Now, I do that to show people where it is, because this projection thing was made for high school kids, and a lot of them, they did a study about 2 years ago, and in 4 years of high school, kids only get 5 minutes on Vietnam War. 10, 12-year war, 9,000 men dead, and they give them 5 minutes. And the 5 minutes are on Martin Luther King's assassination, Watergate, the anti-war movement mostly. That's it. It's sad, but they've been censored out of history. There's the Army bulletin. Book says, there it is, there's Vietnam, that little dimple down there. Vietnam War. The communists took over China. They, the communists are like any kind of, they're terrorists, like any kind of terrorist we have now with the Muslim terrorists. They only want the land that touches theirs. And this spreads like a cancer. And they got China, then they wanted Vietnam, and they got North Vietnam after World War II ended. They went up, the communists went in and took the north part where all the industrial bases were, and where the harbor was, and they took all the minerals up there and that, and they left the south alone until they consolidated the north. After they got the north, they said, hey, we want the south too. It's touching us. And they had the rice bowl down there where all the rice is. We forgot we didn't have enough rice up here in the north of Vietnam. So the Viet Cong attack lasted for a couple of years. And this is when the war really started. Was the people, when they took over North Vietnam, the communists, most of the people who fled to the south were Catholics and Buddhists because they knew their religious freedom was gone. So they fled to the south, the Catholics and the Buddhists. When President Kennedy started sending the first troops over there as advisors, he was a staunch Catholic and he wanted to help Catholics out. It was normal. He wanted to stop this injustice, stand up for people. And that's what started the Vietnam War. That was carried on. Well, I flew to Vietnam on a passenger jet, the stewardesses, the whole bit. They open the door, we walk off, it's like hitting a sauna bath. The captain also told us, when the door opens and the gangway's there, we stop, as soon as the wheels stop. He says, go down the gangplank and run across the tarmac, the runway, and get in those hangars. He says, we're circling ready to land. Right? And he says, the base is under rocket and mortar attack right now. So we ran, and rockets and mortars hitting the runway, we ran across, went to the hangar and processed in. And people say, oh, I met a guy in Japan later that actually a mortar round landed right in front of him as he was coming off the plane, killed the guy in front of him, so as he was on the stairs. So yeah, they did. And this, after I spent 2 days in Cam Ranh Bay, they got my orders to go south to the 9th Division. We got in this plane here, which is called a Caribou, which is a small cargo plane. This is what happens when they catch you on the runway with rockets and mortars. Not pretty sad. Flew down south toward Saigon, passing all the rice fields and that. You can see the bomb craters there all over the place. And we flew through over the rice paddies and stuff, and then got into the Mekong River Delta. Now, someone asked me, what was it like there? Well, the best way to explain it is, you take the Okefenokee Swamp of Florida, you take the Louisiana bayous, and then you maybe throw in a little Amazon jungle, and you get close. Going toward the north, toward Cambodia, they had tigers. I had a friend that had 2 of his buddies in his company killed by tigers. So, we had elephants too. It was a tropical area. We also had this snake here at the top left, ate a deer. The bottom green snake was a bamboo viper. It would kill you after, no antidote. It would kill you after, you could take 3 steps and drop it. Off to the left there, you see there's a guy holding something up. It's a big, giant insect. Off to the right, you see the snakes. There was 40 poisonous snakes in Vietnam. Up above is the spider, and then there was 80 poisonous spiders and scorpions and stuff like that. And of course, there was a friendly monkeys there. They were nice. And there's the leeches. Nobody liked the leeches. They hung on to you, sucked the blood out of you, tired you out, made you work hard. A lot of them said they were like politicians. I'm not saying that. He didn't like leeches. They wouldn't kill you, but they sure would make your life lousy. And so I found out I was jumping not only into a war zone, but into a zone where the nature could kill you. Getting around, we had trucks and jeeps in the main roads a lot, but the armored personnel carriers were the main ones that we used in the Delta. And we also had helicopters. Vietnam was the first helicopter war. And I read reading one history book, and it said during the 12 years or 10 years of the Vietnam War, 5,000 helicopters were shot down. So that tells you that if you have the 2 most bravest people on my thing that I know of are the chopper pilots and the medics, because both of them came in under fire to help people and save lives. and they didn't have to. I got to my base, it was called Dom Tam. This base was built in about 1 year. Half of it was Navy. At the bottom, you see the Navy base where the harbor goes out into the river, and they had their own airport. They had their own Navy base there. Yeah, above that, you see the Army base, which we had our own artillery and our own helicopter base. And I want to remember something here, little. See over here? Over here is a rifle range, okay? Back here, about a quarter mile away, is jungle and bush. And I want you to remember that for a minute. The base was surrounded. I counted 50 light machine gun nests, but there was dozens of heavy machine gun nests and bunkers. This is typical 60 calibers, grenade launchers, and 16s. This is the base from the other side, looking toward the river. And back here, you see these boats. These are the boats that carried the troops that were going in combat. We were to live on those boats. They were the actual combat boats. Down here is the rifle range I was talking about. Along here is a berm. It was a 20-foot high dirt embankment. And here you can see the heavy machine gun emplacement bunkers, and with the light ones scattered along in rifle pits. And we got to Vietnam, and they said, you've got to qualify the M16. I says, I've already qualified twice in the Special Forces. And they said, too bad, everybody qualifies. Some guys that came to Vietnam, and they get in combat, and they didn't know how to shoot their rifles, they didn't know how to take them apart, they didn't know how to put them back together. They got killed trying to put their rifles back together and trying to correct a jam. So we had to go through the M16 course again. Well, we're at that rifle range, and bing, these bullets start flying before we even started. Sergeant says, everybody get down. He gets the radio, he calls in some mortars and some artillery to blast the trees back there, and it stops. And what was all that about? And he says, well, that's just a VC, Charlie. That's just Charlie. He's a sniper out there. And he says, don't worry, he hasn't killed anybody in months. He hasn't hit no one in months. Don't worry about him. And I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, my luck will be the first, you know. I mean, that wasn't a very nice first start, so to speak. Oh, what did I do here? Did I push the wrong button? Never put something in your...
Station time.
Let's pause for a second for station identification. Okay, Lee, what did I do wrong?
I don't know. I think you pushed that middle button.
Uh-oh. This is my